humbled I am to share the stage with our other speakers today. They're absolutely phenomenal, and all of your work is so important. So thank you, Gemma, for allowing me to share this space. I'm not going to lie, I've been geeking out a lot, but that's okay. I've been thinking a lot lately that I'm kind of an awful person to try and make conversation with at a party. Asking me, so what do you do, is a really complicated question. I don't just have one craft. Working across multiple disciplines seems to be quite frowned upon. It's the jack of all trade, master of none thing. The idea that by spreading yourself thin, you're not really very good at any of them. I don't think that's necessarily correct, at least not for me. I sold my first photograph to be on the front cover of a novel by a New York Times best-selling author when I was 18. I've won awards for the films I've made and been in international film festivals. My weirdest claim to fame is that I've been sponsored by the same bra company that Serena Williams is sponsored by. But that's not a very good or a very succinct explanation of who I am as a creative practitioner. It's not a good Instagram bio, you know? Camera emoji, trophy emoji, yellow heart emoji, rainbow flag emoji, hands and peace sign. That's kind of what my Instagram bio looks like right now. Describing myself as a photographer, as a filmmaker, as a designer, writer, blogger, it tells you about the mediums I use to express myself, but it doesn't tell you about the ideas which I used those mediums to convey. It doesn't tell you about the things that I'm passionate about. It doesn't tell you about the things that I hope to make other people passionate about. The ways in which I hope to change the world, namely our relationship with our environment and our relationships with each other. I've got some facts for you guys. I hope you like facts. In the ocean, did you know that everything eats something, which eats Antarctic krill? If I could ask you all to close your eyes for just a second, I promise it's nothing weird. Can you picture what krill look like? Can you imagine these krill, which only grow to 5 centimeters long, are the center of our whole marine food chain? Can you now imagine what 80% of the world's krill disappearing looks like? You can open your eyes now. Does imagining all this make it feel real? So real that you feel empowered to do something about climate change and overfishing? So empowered that you'll remember to do something tomorrow once you've left this event, and the day after, and the week after, and the months after that? Maybe some of you can. Maybe some of you have great visual imaginings. But it's a lot easier when somebody can do the heavy lifting to show you what that does look like. In 2014, I made a film called Why the Southern Ocean. That's the big bit of water between New Zealand and Antarctica. Now, the Southern Ocean's pretty far away, so I improvised. I dyed my bathtub blue, filled it with tiny plastic penguins, and made fake snow from icing sugar. My whole film was shot using extreme close-ups to give you an idea that while we might think of these things as being really tiny and really far away and not affecting us at all, they're actually really big in how important they are to us. So it's 2.5 minutes of all these magnified shots of plastic penguins and ice cubes and icing sugar in my bath. And my final shot was to completely flip this perspective around and show you actually who else is in that bath. My 5-year-old cousin is staring down at these tiny plastic penguins and then looks up into the camera with an expression of confusion. It's a pretty heavy-handed metaphor that we have the power to do something about this and ask the question, are future generations going to understand if we don't? Film is a narrative visual medium, and when you want people to imagine that something they've probably never seen, and probably never will see, is important and will affect them, it makes sense to use that narrative to allow them to see it. That film probably wouldn't have made a good podcast. I could describe every project I've worked on in a similar way. Not that it would have made a bad podcast, but that the medium chosen was influenced by the message which needed to get across. I've been blogging for nearly 10 years, and something I used to do a lot of was outfit photography. I'm really passionate about ethics in fashion, and fashion is something that affects us every day in what we choose to wear, even if you think it doesn't. There's a great scene in the film Devil Wears Prada. If you want to think about how the film industry influences you, you can Google that later, some homework. We like to consume fashion and content related to fashion quickly. Glossy magazines and cheap paper stock you don't feel bad about throwing away. Constantly updating Instagram feeds with new looks and styles that you're probably never going to go back and look through after that 20 minutes in bed before you go to sleep. So I worked with those expectations of how we think about fashion. I did over 50 photo shoots documenting what I wore and why. Every time when somebody clicked on a post from me to ask where I got my shirt from, where I got my shoes from, the caption would discuss how Kmart actually has a better ethical rating than Ralph Lauren, or Farmers, or Gorman, or The Warehouse. Or how I mended things I found from the op shop, or how you could get in touch with people who were also lobbying fashion labels to be better. If you expect people to change their personal habits, you can't just show people a film and be like, in 2013, sweatshops killed over 1,000 people. Bye, do something with that information. It's a knowledge base that people need to grow so they can understand what they need to change. It was about drip feeding social consciousness one blog post at a time. My latest mission is even bigger than the Southern Ocean and even bigger than fashion. It's about changing business. Specifically, the expectations we put on companies who provide services we can't live without. Like electricity, for example. There are 1,600 deaths every year in New Zealand attributed to people not being able to keep their homes warm in winter. But the largest electricity company in New Zealand made over $20 million of net profit after tax. That same power company also owns the Huntly Power Station, which burns coal, directly putting more carbon into our atmosphere. I've spent my career so far either trying to get people to care and hope they hold enough power and privilege to make wide changes, or trying to get people to care and make individual changes. But I think about my cousin sitting in that bath and how huge the gap is between her and what the status quo of leadership is, in politics, in business, in life in general. Every time I've had something to say, I've made something, whether it was a film or a blog post or a series of photographs. This time my mission and the thing I'm making is a social enterprise. I'm still using all the same skills to work out how we get people to understand these issues and want to act on doing something about it. But it's also about designing a solution. It's about stepping up to the plate and saying we need to do something and here's my crack at it. It might not be perfect, it might not solve this problem entirely, but hey, I'm giving it a go. My CV currently states filmmaker, blogger, designer, writer, and the youngest CEO of an electricity company in New Zealand, which seems really, really bizarre until you link all of the threads together. Thank you.